Freshman Massachusetts Congressman Jake Auchincloss has been going to bat for Big Pharma, and it turns out he got a lot of donations from pharma CEOs and other insiders, including his own mother.
Imagine that. Huffington Post reporter Daniel Marans joins us now to discuss. Daniel, welcome.
Great to be here.
Absolutely. Now, can you just break this down for us? Tell us exactly what happened.
Sure. So there's this signature Democratic legislation, H.R. 3. It would empower Medicare to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. And to do it, it would use an international reference pricing. It's sort of the method that's technically called, which says that, in the course of these negotiations, prices that they agree on can never go higher than 120% of the same prices in the UK, Canada, Australia, Japan, France, and Germany. Now, this pisses off the pharmaceutical industry to no end because it ensures that they can't get one over on the government in negotiation, regardless of how it ends up. And of course, if pharma just decides to walk away from the table, the federal government will just say, okay, fine, but we're going to tax you for every dollar above that price that you charge. It would be for a certain universe of drugs. Now, this in itself was a compromise bill that was sort of crafted by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and had to be dragged further to the left by progressives in the last Congress. But this time, when Democrats controlled the Senate and this bill could actually become law, the problem is with centrist Democrats in the House, such as a freshman lawmaker, Jake, as I pronounce it or know how to pronounce it, Jake Auchincloss. And what's sort of odd or what people found remarkable about this is it's less common for a freshman lawmaker in a safe seat to lead a charge against a core Democratic priority in this sort of way. Usually it's somebody in a swing seat or somebody who's been there a little longer. But this is a guy who succeeded Joseph Kennedy III, JK3, in a seat that includes Boston suburbs that have a lot of these companies. And of course, it's a family affair for him. I mean, not just his mother, his sister's deeply embedded in the industry. His father is sort of a deputy to Anthony Fauci. And of course, we know the NIH works very closely with these companies. So what I brought to the table that people hadn't seen before was his money connections. Now, he has sort of walked some of this back, but I can explain that.
Well, and talk about the politics of this too. So he won a very competitive Democratic primary after Kennedy ran for Senate. He won by, I think, fewer than 1,000 votes. He was the most conservative candidate running. He himself is a former Republican. You might have thought that he would try to kind of comfortably position himself as a good resistance liberal so that he doesn't face any challenges from the progressive wing in the next cycle. Do you think this makes him vulnerable, or is there so much kind of big pharma money in this Boston suburb that this is one thing that his voters will give him a pass on?
That's an interesting question. I think that even big pharma executives or the people around them or lower level folks in those companies in a good liberal Massachusetts seat like to think of themselves as not being in the pocket of big pharma. So it's sort of like it kind of reminds me of Andrew Yang kind of going over the top after homeless people and the Upper West Side liberals sort of being like, well, dude, we kind of agree with you that homeless people are annoying, but could you not be as overt about it? We're good liberals here, you know? And I think that if you get branded as being in the pocket of big pharma against somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who probably has a very high approval rating in that district, that's not a great look. And so what actually happened here was Social Security Works sent, which is a progressive group, sent kind of a mobile billboard attacking him for doing big pharma's bidding and writing this letter to Pelosi saying that the bill should be bipartisan and not jeopardize innovation. That's always sort of the buzzword there. And after, sort of lo and behold, after this campaign, he said, well, I didn't mean I would not vote for the bill. Regardless of whether I get to change it, I will vote for the bill. And that has always been my position. Lo and behold, in late June, he becomes a co-sponsor of that legislation. And some groups have backed off, but the fact of the matter is he's still using this same sort of rhetoric that this is price controls, that it will drive down innovation. And this is sort of the classic framework that Big Pharma uses to shut down debate about empowering the government to negotiate prices. They claim that they have these alternatives, but the alternatives they favor are often either pie in the sky or things that are nibbling around the edges, or things that might be good but don't really have the same track record of being proven to be good, like forcing these middlemen, pharmacy benefit managers to pass on their discounts. This is something I didn't really get into in the piece, but I mean, that was something that Trump proposed, right? Kind of pointing the finger at pharmacy benefit managers instead of the drug makers themselves. And what CBO found was it would actually increase costs for some reason and not actually save any money.
So speaking of centrist Dems, some of them understand that they're in some tough re-election fights, and a group of vulnerable centrist House Democrats wrote a letter endorsing proposals that would give the federal government power to negotiate drug prices. But as we just discussed, a handful of those Democrats with ties to pharma have been pushing the other way. Can you weigh in on that dilemma, Daniel?
Yeah, I think that centrists love to say that they are popularists, that they just want the left to calm down and do what wins elections. But sometimes when it comes to their own bottom line, or frankly, I should say that I don't think that this is always as simple, clear cut as corruption. I think that they spend a lot of time with these people and they genuinely are worried about protecting life-saving drugs. Never mind that we know through congressional investigations that some of these drugs, the prices just go up right before a quarterly earnings report, right? I mean, it's not really about innovation, but some of these concerns are legitimate in terms of policy. But yeah, the broader majority of swing seat Democrats understand that this is not Medicare for all, where you have to worry about people feeling like you're jeopardizing their existing plan. This is certainly not defund the police. This is not some kooky left-wing idea. This is an idea that polls at 70+% of the American public, including huge percentages of Republicans. I mean, this is an issue where Medicare beneficiaries, because Medicare only covers 80% of costs, are really hurting on this, or cancer patients. And, from what we know about the Medicare beneficiary population, those are older people, and for a variety of different reasons, they tend to lean a bit more conservative. So, I mean, Republicans in the Senate, for example, guys like Cassidy and Charles Grassley are playing ball on this stuff. So it really is one of these cases where the divide is corporate versus non-corporate rather than Republican versus Democrat always.
Yeah, and as we talked about on this show, Democrats have been urging their swing state members not to talk about Medicare for all, not to talk about a public option. Instead, if they were pressed to talk about health care, to say, well, I support allowing the government to negotiate drug prices down. Like this was the go-to that they ran campaigns on in 2018 and 2020 and are now pressed to finally deliver.
And now they're attacking Nina Turner for not being sufficiently pro-Medicare for all.
Right. Whatever works. And so Bernie Sanders has been pushing this bill to get into the Senate reconciliation package, so that it's part of the $3.5 trillion package that's going through. By all accounts, it's going to be in that package. How confident are you, given the hesitations among people like Auchincloss in the House and whatever pharma-influenced Democrats you have in the Senate?
Yeah, I think it's tricky, but I think the Senate should be something to watch, right? If Ron Wyden in the Senate Finance Committee drafts language that is very similar to what H.R. 3 has right now, I think that puts centrist Democrats in the House in an awkward position. Are you going to be to the right of Democrats and possibly even some Republicans in the Senate? And not only that, Ryan, I think this is a very important point. One of the reasons this is such an important part of this reconciliation package is because it saves the government nearly $500 billion over a decade. So how much you can do sort of depends on how effective the for lack of a better, the bargaining power you give to the federal government is in this law. And as you said, this is the low-hanging fruit. If Democrats can't do this, they're certainly not going to do a public option. And the public is, a deeply cynical public. Again, we're already seeing, right? Some people don't know where their child tax credit's coming from. They're unsure if they qualify. They're having trouble with the website. Every little thing that the federal government does right now seems to be wrapped up in a kludgy bureaucracy that, or people's eyes glaze over with the corruption. And so if you can bring their prescription drug bill down, which is really, something's got to give, right? If you're not going to whack pharma, you might have to whack the hospitals because they like the premium drugs too because they can charge insurers more. But you're going to have to throw some major corporate interest group under the bus if you want to achieve the results that show voters you can deliver for them.
We'll see. Daniel Marans, thank you so much for your time.
Great to be here.
Always appreciate it. We'll be back with more Rising after this.